Our meeting is now open for the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Dave from Florida. Go, please.
Yeah, hi. The other day, I began experiencing some of the symptoms of the virus, which we were hearing so much about. I won't go into details, but a lot of it, I think, was based on fear. We had shut down our club dining facilities because 4 of the kitchen workers tested positive. Also not helping was all the publicity here in Florida and the fact that I was paying attention to a lot of it. As soon as I could, I asked my practitioner for help. She said, "No plague shall come nigh thy dwelling. Shut it out." She told me to study the 91st Psalm, as well as pages 390 to 393 in Science and Health. She also said to really work with the statements on those pages, don't just read them. I did just that. Those pages contain very strong command statements, such as blot out the images of mortal thought and its beliefs in sickness and sin. I made sure I was doing this. This all started late Sunday night, and by yesterday morning, I was feeling fine. No symptoms at all. I'm very grateful for this quick and powerful healing. I'm grateful for Christian Science, the work of the practitioner, and to be a member of this church, and to know that God is really the only solution for all this nonsense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, Arizona.
Jim from Arizona. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. What a wonderful message. This afternoon, I have been spending quality time on our newsletter. Today, it is now have been lengthened by a full page. I am most grateful. Although the foliage in the desert is a premium, my cork oak tree is thriving, so all can enjoy it. And the handiwork of God, I have snapped a photo of it for our newsletter so all can see its growth progress. Although many may not agree with me, I enjoy the beauty God has provided us to enjoy on the desert. I am most grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen, California.
Karen from California. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And thank you for those wonderful readings on happiness. In an article by Reverend Kratzer entitled Hindrances to Healing, he says, quote, "We are by no means so ready to be healed by Spirit if we are all the time judging and examining results with the critical disposition of mortal calculation. The thing to do is to make ready to surrender our all to Spirit, and thus be the better prepared to receive the gifts of Spirit." Last week, it was time for me to renew my driver's license. For the last 15 years, I have been able to renew online. This time, I had to visit the DMV, take a vision test, and a written test. I studied the driver's handbook and took practice tests online. But it was the vision test I was most concerned about. About 2 years ago, I visited an eye doctor to get a pair of prescription sunglasses for driving. With help from my practitioner, I have been knowing that vision is a function of mind, not matter, as we are taught in Christian Science. I did not want to have to use my glasses to read the chart, nor have to go back to the eye doctor to get another prescription. What I wanted was to walk out of the DMV with my new license. The biggest fear I had was that I wasn't going to be able to drive anymore. As you can see, I was certain I knew what needed to happen. The words from the above quote, "surrender our all to Spirit," unquote, meant all self-assertion and self-desire had to go. I had to say to myself and feel in my heart, I don't care if I don't get my driver's license. I don't care if I never drive again. I only want what God wants for me, for that can never be anything but good. The morning of my visit, all the fearful, doubtful thoughts that had been suggesting themselves to me for so many weeks suddenly quieted when I heard, "None of those thoughts have any power. So whether they come or not, it doesn't matter. They can't make anything happen, nor can they prevent God's plan from operating." I was determined to walk into the DMV with a smile on my face and joy in my heart. I arrived 20 minutes before my appointment. As I was standing in line to get a number, we were being told that whether you had an appointment or not, the wait was taking about 2 to 3 hours. I did not let what was said deter me from knowing all things were going on according to God's plan, and I don't care how long it takes. Everyone in line had appointments, and everyone ahead of me was leaving with their number. When I got to the table and received my number, a woman told me to wait a moment, went inside, then came to get me and told me to take the last chair available. As I was noticing the vision charts behind the employees, I was reminded of what my practitioner had been telling me, that as a complete idea of God, I already had everything I needed. My number was called in about 20 minutes. I walked up to the counter and saw that I could read the charts perfectly. In a very short time, the woman behind the counter gave me my temporary license and sent me over to another window to get my picture taken. On my way out, I realized no one was taking written tests. I was so grateful for the lesson I learned in self-surrender and confidence in God's plan. He will never let his child suffer or be without what he needs. I am so grateful to be a member of this church and for all that it does to help those simple seekers for truth to find God and man's relationship to him.
Thank you.
Joanne, Florida.
Joanne from Florida. Go ahead, please.
Thanks. Last week I mentioned that my practitioner here told me to revisit in Watches, Prayers, Arguments by Mary Baker Eddy all the things that Mrs. Eddy says to handle daily in our thinking. I've been doing this every day, and one of the watches that has especially helped me is, quote, "Go by yourself at least 3 times a day to pray. Your prayers should consist of much divine thanks, more realization of the perfect, as well as the denial of error," end quote. After reading this, it occurred to me that I wasn't spending enough time thanking God for all the good that came to me during the day. It was such a basic teaching that I had learned here, but I had neglected it until it was almost forgotten. Now, as I do this, I'm finding that I have so much more to be grateful for with each passing day. The practitioner gave me a great blessing by directing me back to these important daily prayers, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm thankful for this church service tonight, for the beautiful music and readings, and to Mrs. Eddy for giving us Christian Science and for membership in this church. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pam, Virginia.
Pam from Virginia. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening. I want to express my gratitude for an outstanding article that is presently being featured on the Plainfield website entitled Chemicalization and Tribulation by Paul Smiley. The article was written a number of years ago, but it explains to the events that are happening today in our nation and world and how to go about handling all the beliefs that are there with regard to what's going on. I've been working with this article for a number of days, and I have found it so helpful that I've actually been sharing it with quite a few people who I knew would also find it very helpful. I am so grateful for that, and I'm so grateful to be a member of this church. There are so many wonderful benefits that come from being a member, and very grateful to be here tonight. I want to express gratitude for the wonderful readings and also all the testimonies that we will be hearing. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Thank you.
Janet, Georgia.
Janet from Georgia. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I would like to express gratitude this evening for this wonderful service, for this Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, and to my practitioner who has recently helped me through some challenges. I'm so grateful that Mrs. Eddy provided practitioners. She has kept me on the straight and narrow, and especially when there were times when I really didn't think I could be straight at all. And she's helped me to see my true heritage, which is the child of God, and to keep my thought on God, that He alone is the only power, and that nothing else can enter being. I'm so grateful, as I said, that Mrs. Eddy provided practitioners. They have, in this church in particular, have been such a great help to me, and I know to many. And I'm grateful for this church, for all of the activities that we have here, for the wonderful readings tonight, Elizabeth, for the beautiful music, and for the wonderful testimonies so far and those to come. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Luba, Ohio.
Luba from Ohio. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. I want to express my gratitude to my practitioner for a recent healing. I had fallen on our driveway, and my first thought as I got up was, I am not hurt. I called my practitioner, who told me there are no accidents, and said to read Science and Health, page 424 and onward, where Mrs. Eddy says, accidents are unknown to God or immortal mind. Under divine providence, there can be no accidents, since there is no room for imperfection. That evening, it was challenging climbing the stairs to my bedroom and sleeping. However, the next day, much had improved to where I could go on and as before. I'm so grateful for that. I'm very grateful to my practitioner for this healing and to Mrs. Eddy and this church. Thank you so much for tonight's reading, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you.
Day, Georgia.
Day from Georgia. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Recently, I've been praying frequently about my purpose in life, with a deep desire for God to guide and direct me to do His will only, in order to truly bless in this world the way that He intends for me to. Part of this week's watching point reads, love has a plan and purpose for each and every one to fulfill, and none can escape it or fail to perform the will of God. This is the exact reassuring truth that I need to inspire and encourage me to continue on in sincere prayer to my Father for moment-by-moment guidance, knowing that working this way will surely lead me down His perfectly prepared path. I'm so grateful for all that we have in this church that meets every single need that we have every single day. I'm grateful for tonight's readings and for all the testimonies given and those to be given. And I'm very grateful to be a part of this meeting tonight.
Thank you. Jeremy.
Not long after arriving in Plainfield, the idea of putting things on the altar was spoken of at a round table. I had never thought of that before, But having just gone through a very low period of my life, I was rather happy with the thought of giving everything to God and letting Him be in control. Over the years of studying Christian Science here, I've really seen the benefit of placing my employment, my belongings, and even my children on the altar. Practically speaking, it has given me the ability to focus completely on what I feel God is directing me to do each day. Before June of 2019, I had spent many years driving to Connecticut to get my kids at least once, if not 2 times per month. After my son graduated last year, I started feeling less of a pull to take that drive, as each of them are adults now and starting their lives. For the remainder of 2019, I only saw them 3 more times, and for 2020, it wasn't until this month that I've seen them again. I love my kids, and I'm so happy to see them, of course. But what has really stood out to me this week is how placing them on the altar and giving them to God has made it so that my life doesn't fall apart when they're gone. I went so long having this persona I built up that was dependent on other people and circumstances. The reason why things got so low before coming here was because a lot of that situation fell apart and I felt I had nothing left to stand on. Now I have God and what God has in store for me each day, and nothing can take that away. I'm so grateful for that. And now there is no weird pressure I'm placing on my children because I am leaving God to bring us together when it's right and leaving it to God to keep us safe and fulfilled when we're apart. I spend no time being concerned about imaginary problems. What a blessing Christian Science is. I'm so grateful to this church and to my practitioner for helping me through the years with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here tonight. Yesterday evening, as we were about to have dinner, all of a sudden I started feeling pain just above my abdomen. And there was no reason for that. And the thought just came to me immediately, and I said it loud, that there is no pain in love. And I held that thought with me. And I didn't stop eating, so I continued to eat, holding that thought in my heart. By the time I finished dinner, the pain was completely gone, like nothing ever happened. I'm so grateful for this healing and what I'm learning here in this church, that divine love works and doesn't come with any pain. Thank you.
Thank you. Shardy.
Good evening and thank you. My gratitude starts with God, Christ Jesus, Mary Baker Eddy, practitioner support, patient practitioner support, and our Plainfield Independent Church. A few weeks ago, I asked for help from my practitioner because my ear hurt. It wasn't an earache, but it hurt right inside my ear. This discomfort vanished, and then I noticed it tried to return. So I prayed about the law of no reversals. On our website is an article called Excerpts from the Law of Reversal by Herbert Eustace. Many months ago, I happened to come across a sheet of paper titled Reversal, written by Mrs. Evans in 1989. At the top of the sheet is a sentence from Eustace that says, quote, "There is only one law of reversal, God's law, the law that by virtue of its own infinite goodness is the spontaneous destruction or reversal of everything unlike good," end quote. I stuck with this, and the discomfort is gone. It is good to realize that there is no power that can reverse the unfoldment of truth, also found on the sheet mentioned. This law of reversal also applies to a thought that would try to damage someone's reputation, or try to change a fact in history, or a claim of sickness. I am very grateful to have found the prayers and tools taught here at Plainfield that not only protect us and everyone, but restore and comfort and bring progress to our spiritual growth. Thank you.
Thank you.
California.
Betty from California. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. Thank you for the music tonight and also for the readings on happiness tonight. Tonight I'd like to express my gratitude for the church website, which has a section called Watching, which includes the Daily Watch. The Daily Watch this week really hit home, as I sometimes refer to part of my past as a wilderness experience. Years ago, a practitioner had given me a part of the verse from Joel 2:25, quote, "And I will restore the years the locust hath eaten," unquote. This helped a great deal, along with Ecclesiastes 3:15, quote, "And God requireth that which is past," end quote. These two statements helped me to let go and give it to God, the past, that is. But this week's watching point helped me to see that I can let go of the mortal with the past and identify as God's child and not let error tell me otherwise. I'd like to read that. It's a fairly short watching point. It reads, "Watch, lest you forget that in science there is nothing in your past that cannot be turned into a constructive step in your spiritual growth, on the basis that all things work together for good to them that love God. Hence, we should never permit ourselves to regret anything in the past." Once, Mrs. Eddy wrote, "God's child can never make a mistake, can never lose an opportunity, can never cause a regret. His life is bright with abundant goodness, hope, promise. Love has a plan and a purpose for each and every one to fulfill, and none can escape it or fail to perform the will of God." Very grateful to be a member of this church and for practitioner help over the years. And I'm very happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda.
Tonight I'd like to express my gratitude for this church and to be here learning the correct practice of Christian Science that teaches how to love all people, to forgive as Jesus forgave, and to live peacefully with all our brethren, and to pray effectively for all mankind. This love of God that heals and reforms the heart. I came across a note in my pile of pocket prayers that reminded me to practice quietness of heart. I'm not always where I'd like to be, but in preparing for this testimony, I looked back at where I was when I first came to this church. I would like to acknowledge the progress gained from working regularly with my Plainfield practitioner, who is teaching me to keep in the restful presence of the love of God. There are many things I no longer accept or act on. When I arrived at Plainfield, I had tried everything I could to gain peace of mind. The power of Christian Science is curing many bad habits that had led to nervous temperament, reactive panic state that caused many destructive behaviors and illnesses. This quietness comes from practicing the laws and principles from the Bible and Science and Health and other writings of Mrs. Eddy's that are wholly based on the Bible. Some of the most helpful things that I have gained since being here is learning to be grateful, live an honest life, memorize the 91st Psalm, share the testimony of healings, not acting under pressure, to stop self-pity, cast out thoughts like envy, learning to put God first in my life, taking moral stands, and participating in the weekly Unity Watches prayers here, and attending classes and living daily what is given. I feel like the coming here fits the line from one of our hymns, number 45, quote, "Reclothe us in our rightful mind." And the hymn ends with, "And let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace," end quote. And I'd like to say that being here has given me a constructive way to live and brought health where there had been illness before. I'm very grateful for the teaching and examples of Christ Jesus, for Mary Baker Eddy and the great sacrifices she made all her life for all mankind to have this science of healing, and the Plainfield Church and for its members and their sacrifices so we can have these correct teachings. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce.
So, in an earlier testimony, the watching point on the website today was mentioned. And one of the things in that watching point is a reference passage from Romans where Paul says, "All things work together for good to them that love God." And remember, that made me very grateful for this church here in Plainfield, because when I first got here some years ago, it was like I couldn't get a good opportunity if I had to. And I now know at the time that I had so much fear and insecurity that I had to overcome. But the other thing that I had to learn was to learn how to love God, like it says in Romans. And I got to admit, I didn't really know that much about God. But I'm very thankful for this church, which has helped me immensely. One of the things that I learned was that I had to allow God to get my life in order, and that I had to do things completely and accurately and do them to God's glory. And at the time I thought, well, this is like living responsibly. But responsibly is not just a personal virtue, it's actually a divine virtue, which means it's responding to God's ability. God is able. But the question is, am I willing to respond to his ability? And I've been learning that bit by bit here in this church over the years. And I must say that there have been many opportunities of good that have come as a result of this. So I'm so thankful for our God, thankful to be on the path to learn what he's like and how to love him more, and to be his servant, because it brought many good blessings for which I'm very thankful.
Thank you. Gary.
I'm grateful tonight for one of the many lessons that I've learned as a member of this church, learning how to practice true Christian Science. And that is to cultivate my spiritual sense, to learn to trust my spiritual sense, and to obey my spiritual sense. Well, I've given this testimony before, but this was such a huge, important thing and such a change in my life that it's worth repeating. An example of this, I'm in the investment business, and many years ago I made an investment that on the surface looked like it was really very good. But afterwards I was troubled. My spirit was troubled. My soul was troubled. And I couldn't sleep that night. There was just one aspect of this investment that kept coming to me as troubling. So the next day, I talked to a few people about that aspect of this investment, and most of them said, "No problem. Don't worry about it. You're fine. And that next night, I didn't sleep again. It kept coming back to me. Well, as I learned this in this church, I recognized that God was speaking to me. God was trying to tell me something. And I knew I had to obey. So the next day, I made arrangements to sell what I had just recently purchased. And to do so was actually quite embarrassing because I had to let a lot of people know that I was selling it, and including our most important client. And it was clear in wanting to sell it that I was having to admit that I thought I made a mistake. So I sold the investment, took a small loss, but that night I slept really well. And since then I slept really well. Well, about 6 months later, I learned that the aspect of that investment that I was concerned about was in fact worth being concerned about. That it was a serious problem. And that whoever owned that investment at the time lost a lot of money. So I'm grateful for what I'm learning about listening for God and trusting my spiritual sense and acting on it. I'm grateful for the practitioners in this church who have helped me to see better who and what God is and what my relationship is. And I'm grateful to Mrs. Eddy for discovering this science and persevering to give it to all of us, because it is the one thing that blesses everyone. So grateful to be here tonight. Thank you for the readings. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Florence, Georgia.
Florence from Georgia. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the beautiful readings about obeying God and being happy. Tonight, I'd like to share something that I shared like 5 years ago, but because of what I hear in the practice, I'd like to just give it as a reminder. Many years ago, when I started studying Christian Science, my suffering sense was so intense that I kept reading everything I felt I needed to read, thinking that meant I was being obedient. All that reading, studying the lessons, attending services, and so on did nothing to relieve my awful, fearful sense until I was awakened to the discipline of consistently applying the truth. There's a citation on page 476 of Science and Health which states, "Learn this, O mortal, and earnestly seek the spiritual status of man." This speaks to what we are to learn and practice about ourselves. This is what Christ Jesus, the greatest man and yet the humblest that ever lived, did. And then on page 25 of our textbook, it also says, "By his obedience to God, he demonstrated more spiritually than all others the principle of being." There is a subtle disobedience that can go on unnoticed for a very long time if I don't awaken to this truth. The result of this disobedience is seen even in long-time practicing scientists who, in ignorant disobedience, insist on holding on to the mortal view of self while yet seeking to be freed readily from their ills and diseases. Again, we read in our textbook on page 19, "If living in disobedience to him, I ought to feel no security, although God is good." We are instructed that perfect God, perfect man, as the basis of thought and demonstration, is what reveals to us that Christ man, the spiritual status of man, which cannot be sick, which is under the law of God, not subject to mortal material laws and beliefs of sickness, lack, hunger, discord of any kind. That is the man that is hid in Christ, in the unchanging love of God. We notice in the Bible how Jacob embraced his new birth, which revealed his true identity. Apostle Paul did the same. So living consistently with that recognition, they walked as God's own likeness and accomplished much. It means that we all must humbly accept this new view of self with the deepest gratitude. We must love, nurture, cherish, and mother it consistently to make it our own. Now I know for sure that this is the only view we can work from if we are to do the greater works as Christ Jesus promised. I'm so grateful for Mary Baker Eddy, her obedience to God to give this saving, powerful, truth to all mankind. Thank you for all the other testimonies, and I am happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. Mary.
This is from our church website bulletin board, Pennsylvania. Thank you for the Unity Watch for July 9th. The quote from Peter V. Ross's Lectures on Christian Science, page 203, about working for the world, its affairs, and people, was especially inspiring and encouraging. Thank you, Plainfield, for all you are doing to help keep us working, watching, praying more consistently and effectively. And then New Jersey, instructions for the pandemic. Make sure you test positive for faith. Keep your distance from doubt and isolate yourself from fear. Trust in God through it all. Author unknown. And then California. I appreciate the article Excerpts from the Law of Reversal by Herbert Eustace. Thank you. And the roundtable and lesson today, that was this past Sunday, hit me like a refreshing wave of clean ocean water. Thank you all, and happy Sunday. And then this is a letter from Florida. Dear Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, thank you for being there. I have been studying the book Christian Science, Its Clear, Correct Teaching, and Complete Writings by Herbert W. Eustace through this whole debacle. My thought has been so inspired and illumined that I have been able to maintain peace throughout this period, and when momentary lapses would seem to occur, I am reminded that divine principle is love, the foundation. In studying Christian Science these past 7 years, I have missed that point. I am grateful to the people who placed his class online free, and even more grateful that Plainfield sells it, as I do much better with a book at hand. It has removed much fear and anger from my daily life and helped me have more compassion. Knowing love is the basis has allowed me to sleep better, not worry, but pray knowingly, and I have become much more responsive rather than reactive. I am appreciative of my meditation and communion with God and the illumination and inspiration that follows every day. Thank you for lessons and for being there. Boundless blessings of love. And this is England. Thank you very much for Sunday's roundtable, which I've just been listening to again this morning. It was especially interesting to hear Mrs. Eddy's approach to, quote, authorized literature, unquote, which I hadn't heard before. Also about the history of the Christian Science Church in calling in various writings which had until then been in the public domain. Thank you very much for making this known, and much love to you all. And then this was a testimony from Hawaii. The recent roundtable where prayerful and action-based focus on Reformation was discussed was right in line with things I've been mulling lately. Thanks to everyone there who shared their perspectives. Thought you might like to hear a bit of good news from my neck of the woods in this regard. I've been praying actively, as well as manually endeavoring to help stop the rollout of harmful 5G technology here in Hawaii, as so many towns, states, and entire countries are attempting to do. Because by the telecom company's own admission, this technology has not been safely tested at all. And many scientists worldwide, as well as those in the healthcare professions, are gravely concerned. But today we had a win for the people of my island, and sanity prevailed at our local county council planning department meeting on a recently proposed no 5G unless proven safe resolution. I prayed and sent emails and prayed some more, and then all we could do was watch what would happen. Well, testifiers showed up in person, and almost all in support of the no G unless proven safe resolution. Plus, 293 more written testimonies were received online in support of the resolution too, which, as anyone in this rural location knows, is amazing, since it's generally hard to get anyone to rally up energy about anything. But we won. When the vote was taken, the resolution went through. Even in the face of a corporate consultancy set up specifically to lobby up a storm towards helping telecommunication corporations successfully navigate Hawaii's governmental and regulatory landscape by leveraging networks and relationships with elected officials, government administrators, local business leaders, and community influences. There will be more to do, of course. Changing a worldwide pattern of leaning towards profit, regardless of systematic harm, is quite the undertaking. But for today, we had a win. Blessings and hugs from Hawaii, and thanks for all Plainfield is doing to help the truth of a healthy world for everyone become more evident. And then Texas. I am thoroughly enjoying the archived roundtable discussions. I've listened to 2018 and now am into 2019. Oh my, such gems of inspiration. Please extend my thanks to all who participate, as I feel as if they are all my family, and indeed they are. And then another one from Hawaii. Got 2 new people from Hawaii. Thank you for steering me to all the wonderful and free downloads available on the Plainfield Christian Science website. I have been enjoying listening to and reading the many articles offered. We especially like Bicknell Young's writings so much that I have one of his sayings taped on my desk. With such a trove of articles and support at my fingertips, it was a natural next step to donate monthly to the Plainfield Christian Science Church through PayPal. I am so grateful and humbled when I think of your independent church and its members and the constant and selfless work they provide. Thank you and warmest regards. And then a testimony from California. Since finding the Plainfield Christian Science Church independent, I have been thinking much on the word gratitude. It fills this church. It is alive in every one of us who participate in the reading of the weekly lessons, pray for the world through the watches, attend Wednesday evening and Sunday online services, listen to roundtable discussions, support the periodicals, Love is the Liberator and the newsletter, study the articles on the carousel, post on the forum and bulletin boards, and so much more. It is testified to each Wednesday night in the testimony meetings, where testifiers express heartfelt gratitude for the church, the practitioners, healings, guidance, inspiration, unfoldment, and knowing God's presence throughout the day. It means so much more than a word or momentary thought. I have been praying for something more to define what I feel, what I think others are feeling, and what this church opens up in the hearts of those who love it. Finally, several nights ago, in watching a not-so-great movie on Moses, the best movie script line of all time was stated, and it gave me what I was searching for. Quote, "Gratitude is not a word. It is the desire to keep saying the word." End quote. It is one thing to remember to give gratitude, but a totally different thing to be driven to give it all the time because something so real and wonderful is now a part of us. My love to the Plainfield Church, to God, our Father, Mother, who dwells here and walks here, and the joy we all come to know because we have found the pearl of great price. It is an outpouring of love that never ceases and couldn't anyway. This person also wrote on Sunday, she sent me a text that it was the most beautiful sacrament service she'd ever been to this past Sunday. She said the music, the readings, the readers, and she just said what she felt moved her to tears, and she was so grateful for it. Thank you so much for those readings tonight. We have been taught here that joy and gratitude are two essential ingredients to any healing. And I think that's why you feel it from all of us, because we've learned to be joyful and to be grateful. We are connecting our relationship with our Father, Mother, God when we are grateful to Him. This spring, there's been a little bird who has been living in our backyard. I think it's a Carolina wren, and it's the most joyful little bird. It's taught me many lessons, and I will hear her in the morning singing. It's just a little tiny brown bird, and it makes such joyful noise. I named her Jubilee, and then in the evening, again, I hear her singing. And the singing even surpasses gratitude. It's more just like praise. Praise to be alive. Praise. I know her little heart must know God because it's such a beautiful little heart. And I love to hear her. It's such a wonderful reminder of giving praise to our Father, Mother, God. And I was reminded of a time many years ago when I was in a very deep and dark spot. I didn't feel I knew my way out. I had a boatload of troubles, and I remembered being taught here to sing hymns, to go through the hymnal, singing hymns, either consecutively or randomly. And I took out my hymnal and I opened up to, was hymn number 260. And the first verse, "One thought I have, my ample creed, so deep it is and broad, and equal to my every need, it is the thought of God." That left such an impression on me. Equal to my every need, the thought of God. What more did I need? Even though I felt I had nothing, I was in a terrible plight, I didn't know how to get out of it. All I needed was God, and that verse just spoke to me. And then the second hymn, the second verse, "Each morn unfolds His blessings new. I take and trust my road, and rising freshly to my view, shines forth the thought of God." So that was my next direction. I'd get up every morning and take in trust my road. My Father, Mother, God was with me. I didn't know what the day would bring, but I could trust God with it. And rising freshly to my view, yes, was that thought of God. And I would sing that hymn just like little Jubilee would sing every morning. I sang that hymn until I got my joy and gratitude. And I would say it was largely part of how I worked my way out of that situation, by expressing joy and gratitude